not just putting, a bunch of pictures on the website and calling it a day and having 2 or 3 pages, but layers and layers of pages and content and being the expert in my field. Yeah. When I learned that that's the pathway that I need to go, then the strategy was easy to come up with. But it's just really figuring out what works and what doesn't. So if I'm here to tell you anything, I'm here to tell you that A through Z, everything in your shop floor needs to change if you want to change.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. People often talk about the importance of diversification, especially for cash-intensive businesses such as manufacturing. But what exactly is diversification and how to plan for it? Is it about having the right balance of customers? Is it about rejecting opportunities even if you might have millions of dollars knocking on your doors? Well, diversification requires the complete change of thinking and redesign of your business model. To be completely diversified, you can't just be revenue focused. You need to think about possibilities such as, what if your major customer goes bankrupt or gets acquired, or they end up canceling orders due to a financial or marketing risk at their end? In today's episode, our guest Aneesa Muthana shares her journey of transforming her shop after losing all of her key customers because of the consolidation customers industries. She also discusses why diversification is important for manufacturing businesses and how to diversify the business in a methodical manner rather than jumping onto every opportunity that comes your way. Finally, she shares why manufacturers require complete transformation of their shop and not just one aspect, including understanding modern marketing methods, cutting-edge manufacturing practices, and cost-saving strategies to stay afloat in business. Let me introduce Aneesa to you. Aneesa is a hands-on leader with extensive experience in almost every aspect of a production machining environment. Aneesa attributes this success to building a team that embraces continuous improvement, diversity, and leading-edge technology. She has won numerous awards, including the Manufacturing Institute's Award 2019, NAWBO Women Business Owner of the Year, Cranes 2019, and 2020 Notable Women in Manufacturing, and SWE Women Engineers You Should Know. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Aneesa, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course, and I am so excited to have you just because the kind of stories you have had, the kind of challenges you have had in running your business, I am super excited to dig deeper into that. Just to kick things off, Aneesa, do you want to start with your personal story and what you are focusing on these days?
Sure. So I started in manufacturing at a very young age. My parents opened up a grinding shop back in the 80s.
Okay.
I was only 11 years old. And I was sweeping the floors and cleaning out tanks and answering phones. By the time I was 13, I started running centerless grinders. And I stayed with my family business until I was 23 years old. And that was back in 1993.
Okay.
And for the engineers in the room that are counting their fingers, I am going to be 52 this year. Nonetheless, I left the family business and I went into partnership with my uncle. We went into machining versus the centerless grinding that we were doing at my dad's company because I didn't want, obviously, to compete with my family.
Okay.
So we focused on machining. We started with older machines, Brown & Sharp's Davenport screw machines. And we did do also centerless grinding, but for our own use and piece parts, and bar grinding for our own use, controlling costs and processes instead of buying from companies like my father's company. And that was back in 1993. So nonetheless, 1993, we were thriving like many manufacturers in the 90s. We were doing very well. We had a handful of customers and we were happy with that. We were basically dumb, fat, and happy. We didn't know better. And so we continued to make parts the old fashioned way. It was not as dark, dirty, and grimy as many shops out there at the time. I took great pleasure in having a clean shop, but it was, again, older machines. So that caused a lot of spilling, a lot of more older machines, dark colors in the shop. But nonetheless, we were okay until the first recession, 2001. Like the rest of the world after 9/11, we not only suffered as American citizens and mourned the loss of the people that were killed, the economy obviously suffered as well. And we survived that. And then back in 2007 through 9, with the recession, we also were happy that we survived that. And a big key reason why we survived all of the challenges that we were faced, like other businesses, in particular the manufacturers, was because we were very low in debt. I took great pride in paying off my building, and anything if I couldn't afford to pay for it, I didn't buy it. Okay. And that was also a double-edged sword. I didn't have the debt, but I didn't have the technology either because I wasn't investing. Yeah. So looking back at it, it was a blessing, but it was also one of the challenges I had to face because I didn't know what was out there because I wasn't investing my time or money in technology. Yeah. So then in 2012, we lost 90% of our business, literally within 6 months. It was extremely painful. Yeah. It was our 5 top customers were bought out by a big OEM. Okay. And in doing that, I faced a huge challenge in keeping my doors open, meeting payroll, as every business owner out there understands. Until you make payroll, you aren't a business owner. You got to really surviving that and being able to put your employees ahead of your own needs was something that I was doing every week, year after year, just to survive, just to be above water. I didn't want to send people home. I did have to cut hours, but I didn't send anyone home. And then I discovered CNC. I got out of my comfort zone. I went out networking. I was on Google. I was on YouTube. Yeah. Really understanding what the industry leaders were doing. And in my journey, I found CNC Swiss, and I loved it. I saw it as a great fit for my company and my team. It was obviously something very new to us, extremely challenging. Yeah. But we bought our first 2 machines, and our very strong partner throughout the entire journey. Back then it was 2 machines back in 2014. And today we have 29 brand new CNC machines, 26 of them being CNC Swiss. And our partner, Star, helped us develop training programs, helped us get parts that we were quoting or we were making on the old platform, but doing many secondary operations, which is very costly, as many manufacturers know. The more you touch the part, the more costly it is, and the more susceptible it is to have a quality issue. So nonetheless, we went into CNC Swiss machining, and we found that was a really good fit of ours. And now we continue. We have built a new customer base, new industries, new platforms that we're providing parts for, everything from aerospace to electrical vehicles, to medical devices, to biotech industries, industrial, elevator industry. So a wide variety of industries and applications. So if something like back in the 90s, I was really just concentrating on 1 or 2 industries. Yeah. If that happens again, we are in a very strong position being able to provide different parts, different types of parts, because of the complexity of the parts today are very different than what we were providing back in 2012. And to be completely honest, that business went to either Mexico or China, where this business isn't likely to happen. It's a lot more precise, and the demand is for on-time delivery and quality is a lot more difficult to meet than it was back in the 90s and early 2000s.
Okay, amazing. So I am going to have so many questions on the background. I'm super excited to dig into, the story and how you lost the business and again, recovered from there. But before that, we are going to have one of the standard questions that we ask every single guest. And that's going to be, Aneesa, what is your perspective on business growth?
So business growth, for it to be sustainable business growth, partnerships.
Yeah.
100%. Partnerships with your customers, with your suppliers, and with your employees. You need to set a standard as far as setting those guidelines with your customers, and it's okay to fire a customer.
Yeah.
But it's not okay to beat up on your supplier. It has to be both ways.
Yep.
So developing those strong partnerships, and I think now with the supply chain issues that we're facing, I think this is where whatever you were doing prior to the supply chain issues you're facing today. If you treated your suppliers right, you'll be on the very top of their list. If you didn't, you're pretty much paying the price for it now. So I think that in itself is huge. And, I always say people first. It doesn't mean that I don't care about the bottom line or I'm not in it for a profit. I obviously am, and I'm unapologetic about it. I'm good with that.
Yeah.
But I don't want to go home feeling that I treated my employees any different than how I would want someone to treat me or my children.
Yeah.
So that's important to me as well.
Yeah, I think the balance of that is definitely important. And to your comment related to suppliers, if you really develop the relationship with them, they can bring a lot of business to you, depending upon how you manage the relationship. Because as you look at the manufacturing industry, it's a very tight-knit industry in general. And they are going to be hanging out with the similar customers that you probably be serving. So you might get a lot of different referrals and intros from there. So I want to actually go back to some of the comments that you made related to losing business in 2012. So what I try to do here is I am actually trying to assess the business model. So obviously you made a lot of changes overall from the technology perspective. I can almost guarantee that you had a lot of issues overall from the part perspective, the kind of parts you were able to build before CNC. But give me a little bit of taste of the business model. So you said that your 5 customers were acquired by the OEM, but I don't know if you are able to break it down, how many customers you had at that time, how many industries were you serving, and why you ran into that risk at that point of time. Because were you serving the same customers that were potentially going to be acquired by the OEM? So tell me your perspective at that time. How was the business model back then?
So my perspective is that I'm making these types of parts, and I've now become an expert in making a certain part, certain diameters and lengths and features, right? So I'm becoming the expert. So I then solicit those types of parts. Okay. In doing so, I'm only serving a handful of industries, if that, probably like 2 or 3 in industries and applications. Yeah. And so I've perfected it. I'm making good money because I'm becoming very efficient in making it that way. So it's kind of like, again, a double-edged sword. I'm happy because I don't need to worry about training. We're making this part, part A through Z, all very similar. So there's a lot of efficiency there. There's a lot of cross training. There's a lot of, we're very comfortable. We're in a box right now. This is exactly what we're making. And we probably had, I would say, about 50 customers, but the 80-20 rule, we weren't following that. So we were definitely, our top 5 customers were well over 80%. Yeah. And so that in itself is a scary situation. Yeah. And it wasn't that we didn't want to change. It's just that we didn't have a roadmap to that change, and we didn't feel comfortable, and we didn't have an incentive to change. Because if you're making money, and this is, when I hear people today speaking about not wanting change and we're fine. I was that person. I'm going to admit, and it's humbling to admit because you want to feel like you were always innovative. You were always looking at technology, but I wasn't. I was okay with being, again, old manufacturing. And there's, again, I have my utmost respect for the craftsmen that have paved the way for us today, because technology today is only possible because of that old manufacturing that we had before. But to stay competitive and to be able to really serve multiple industries, and also even when you win a customer, serve multiple applications, you need to learn about, diversity in not just manufacturing, but diversity in thought and innovation and technology. And so that I feel is very important to my business model today that I did not have back prior to 2012.
Okay, so very interesting. So obviously your issue was the lack of diversification in the business model, and you just did not see that, there could be a possibility that bigger industry forces are going to come in your way and they are going to acquire all of your customers. That is very unlikely. So let's say if I am looking at some of the manufacturers that we are working with, and they might not understand, what diversification really means. So are you able to provide sort of in the form of example or story, what kind of part you were building? Give me the real example of a part and what kind of industries or sub-industries you were serving and they got acquired, because a lot of manufacturers, the ones that I'm talking to, they don't even understand, how the supply chain works, how the acquisition works, how industry moves. So are you able to provide a story in terms of what were these parts and which were the industries that you had in those 50 customers that you had?
So I would say our major industry that we served was HVAC.
Okay.
We also served other industries like sporting goods, but very simple parts like straight shafts. They would have a thread or a slot. There would definitely be grinding involved because that was my background.
Yeah.
And although I wasn't competing with my family on piece part grinding, it's very precise. So the value that we were adding to the parts were more in the grinding and not the machining part of it.
Okay.
So if I were to compare today, we still do the grinding and we're still very precise in the grinding. We hold, 1/10 tolerance on the grinding.
Yeah.
And on the machining, we'll hold like tenths, not 1/10, but tenths or thousandths, depending on the dimension. So on the machining end, holding thousandths or, tenths is very precise. On the grinding, 1/10 tolerance is also precise. Putting those together is fantastic. And so I didn't have the precise machining. I had only the precise grinding. So having that combination of being able to make a part that's not only high precision machining, but high precision grinding is, I think, the value that we add as a supplier. And even my competitors today, with the technology that they have, most of the time they send out their grinding, and sometimes they even send it out to me. So, and at times I'll accept, depending on who the customer is, that I would be more than happy to help someone and do their grinding operations. But there's grinding shops out there that only do grinding, piece part grinding. I'm not talking about bar grinding, but piece part grinding, where we already add that value. So I would say that that's where the value added is today versus before. The value added, the high precision was only grinding before. Now it's high precision and grinding, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. In fact, Aneesa, I'm actually going to go back to the business model again. And if I look at my manufacturers and the customers and the suppliers that we are working with, I call this as the acquisition or the industry risk. And I don't know how many manufacturers really understand whether you might be running into that risk. They might be making, let's say, they might have a business of 10 million, 15 million, $20 million, and they might have 50 customers. They might be super happy about it. But the way industries typically move, it's going to be very different. So in this particular case, when you heard that, I don't know how your journey was overall, when you heard that your top customers are being acquired, obviously there must be a little bit of panic there. When you lose customers, it's not a comfortable situation to be in, right? When you had these 5 customers and they got acquired within 6 months.
It didn't end the way that I'd like it to end. I think it's a blessing in disguise. It was a blessing in disguise at the time. I didn't know it was a blessing, but it got me out of my comfort zone. It was bound to happen. So any manufacturer out there, if you're putting all your efforts into one industry, that's dangerous. because when that industry fluctuates, you'll be suffering. And even like, let's just say right now, Tesla.
Yeah.
If I were to allow and I'm tier 2 to Tesla, so I'm not providing parts directly to Tesla, but to one of their suppliers, right? Tier 1, I'm tier 2. So as a tier 2 supplier, right now, I could buy 10 more machines and be busy. Is it sustainable? Probably, right?
Yeah.
If I were to convert every single machine right now on my shop floor to provide them parts, I could do that. And I could make a lot of money doing that.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing that because I don't want to put my eggs all in my Tesla basket, if that makes sense. So I'm diversifying by making sure that I might have a machine down in between setups on smaller volume.
Yeah.
But I'd much rather that than have it run 24/7 and designate all my time, energy, and resources to a smaller list of customers. And so there's a price that I'm paying for it, because if I were to just plug and play and basically just make the same old parts, I'm putting myself at risk. And that risk isn't worth the short-term success, because I'm looking for long-term. I'm looking to develop relationships and partnerships with multiple customers, multiple industries, and even with my customer base. For instance, automotive wasn't anything that I ever wanted to go into, except for electrical vehicles and high-end vehicles. I never wanted to provide parts to the typical automotive. No disrespect to the industry, no disrespect to the suppliers that are supplying parts to them, but the margins are very tight.
Yeah.
And I knew if there would be a mistake back there, I would suffer and I would put my company at risk.
Yeah.
So that industry I stayed away from. But I went to the shows, and I went to the shows because I knew their tier 1 suppliers also made parts for medical devices. And that's a space that I wanted to be in.
Yeah.
So I would go there and show my face and show my company. And this was my marketing strategy. And knowing that if I were to get a job from Chrysler, right, and I were tier 2 to Chrysler, they would need to know everything about making the part. But my strategy was, I want to be profitable.
Yeah.
I want my KPIs to go skyrocketing, on-time delivery. I want my quality. I want to go above and beyond what my customers were expecting. So if my customer is expecting us to hold a tolerance of, let's just say, plus or minus 5,000, I want to hold plus or minus 2 or 1. And when they measure my parts and they see that I'm right in the mean and I'm not way high and way low, that's the value I want to add. If I do that for Chrysler, there won't be a second thought to them. Where I do it for a smaller company that's counting on a fitting and counting on us holding those tolerances, and we went above and beyond.
Yeah.
That's where I'm developing those partnerships. And when a customer needs a rush part and I'm able to provide it to them earlier than expected, that's what I want to do. I want to exceed their quality expectations. I want to exceed their delivery and lead time expectations. And those are the partnerships I'm building, because I'm not just a number. If I were to sell to Chrysler, I will be just a number. So that's my strategy. That's my part of my many layers of my business plan.
Okay, so let's go back to the traditional manufacturing versus the CNC magic that you were able to acquire. So maybe talk from the quality perspective. And you did mention that when you did not have CNC machine, and CNC actually did all the magic for you. But now, if you look at the majority of the shops, I guess, they all are probably trying to figure out how to get more CNC machines, how to get machinists that are going to be super qualified. So in your case, was machine the only factor, or were there other factors involved, such as training, finding right people, in creating the parts that you were looking for, that you believe are going to be irreplaceable, especially from these countries such as China or Mexico?
So if you were to have walked into my shop,
yeah,
in my building in general, in prior to 2012, actually even prior to 2000, and I would say 13, you would not recognize this company. You would say this is a completely total different company.
Okay.
So it started by marketing. And I know that this is a huge weakness for my fellow manufacturers. And the people that are doing it are knocking it out of the park because there's not a lot of competition in this space. When I started changing my company, that's where I started. I needed now a new audience. How do I even get opportunities? What's the point of buying machines if I'm not getting opportunities?
Yeah.
So what I started to do was I built a brand new website. I went to workshops. Google is your friend.
Yeah.
YouTube is your friend. I learned on Google everything from CNC machining to how to hashtag. It's like the resources that are available to us is ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's no reason for us not to be able to learn. But sometimes we get stuck. And when we get stuck, we don't realize that these resources are there. And I'm not saying be naive and believe everything you hear, because we don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
But if you're seeing consistency and you're testing waters, that's how you figure out what's a good fit for you. So when I learned about hashtagging, when I learned about LinkedIn, when I learned about developing a website and AdWords and content and not just putting, a bunch of pictures on the website and calling it a day and having 2 or 3 pages, but layers and layers of pages and content and being the expert in my field.
Yeah.
When I learned that that's the pathway that I need to go, then the strategy was easy to come up with. But it's just really figuring out what works and what doesn't. So if I'm here to tell you anything, I'm here to tell you that A through Z, everything in your shop floor needs to change if you want to change. It can't just be, I bought a piece of equipment, I'm not making money. What's the problem? It's because people don't know what you're capable of making. You need options. So when I first bought my Swiss machine, I had prints like this thick that I was quoting, okay? So when I went shopping for the machine, I went to a few dealers, and the first dealer was like, what are you doing here, little girl? Like, we don't have time for you. And I was like, okay. And then I went to the dealer number 2.
Yeah.
And dealer number 2, they were hungry. They saw that I was getting out of my comfort zone. They saw that I was a little bit naive, but they also saw a lot of hunger.
Yeah.
And they were like, come here, let me help you. So I gave them those prints. I didn't have orders for most of them. I had orders for some, but I didn't have orders for most of them. And my strategy at the time was, okay, Star, which I ended up buying, Star Machines.
Yeah.
I have these prints for you. I'm going to buy these 2 machines, and I want contingencies on these prints. I want you to develop cycle time, how to run it. I want tooling. Like everything that I'm learning on YouTube, I'm telling them I want, right? I want this and I want this and I want that. And I want training for my guys. And obviously they, a little bit like, this lady wants a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
But they're like, bring it on. Those are their exact words. My salesperson said, bring it on. We're here for you. So then they developed this plan. I had a contingencies parts, several of them, and one of them was due on Monday to start running, like at the cycle time that we agreed to. They had flown people out from New York. They had tool companies out here over the weekend. They were all over on my shop. I saw like all these like huddles like here and there in my shop on a Sunday.
Yeah.
And then I see this big guy. Later, I realized he was their top guy. He was basically their not just an engineer, but the guy that plans out everything.
Yeah.
With this green silk shirt and his head in my machine, splattering oil on him and lubricants on him as he's running the machine and getting the cycle time to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
And just puts his hand up in the air. It's good. And I'm watching from a distance because I don't want to be that person. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So I'm watching from a distance and just praying, please, God, I don't want to fail my customer. And so He got it up and running. That next day, we were able to ship the parts to our heat treater and then ship it later that week to our customer. He saved the day, and he saved it again and again and again. That was my first experience with them. And then that's when you talk about growth, that partnership. That was 2 machines, July 2014. I today have 26 machines plus many still on order with that same partner. That's how you develop a partnership. You save the day over and over, and your customer will notice. And if they don't, then it's not a partnership. But I did. And I knew that I picked the right supplier.
Yeah.
Are there other machines out there that are maybe fancier and can do a lot more than those machines?
Yeah.
I'm sure there is. But will that supplier do what this supplier did for me? Likely not.
I agree. I think the relationships are always far more important than anything else. So I am actually going to have some follow-up questions for you, and I don't know if this is going to be a limitation of those machines, or it is going to be your specific parts that you may be building. But why was it so challenging to get cycle time, the one that you were looking for? Did they not have this experience before at other machine shops getting this? What was the challenge in getting that cycle time?
So the cycle time came on the front end. We didn't know what kind of a cycle time we were even looking for. We just wanted to be competitive. We didn't want to lose money. And so on the front end, before I signed for the machines, that's what I asked them for. I was like, I need cycle times for these machines, for these parts. And some of them we already quoted. We've already gotten orders for. And so that cycle time, as long as it was aligned or close to what we quoted as far as cost, then we were fine. But my concern is that let's just say that I quoted the part for $1.
Okay.
And based on $1, I'm thinking like a little over a minute cycle time plus material plus outside processing.
Yeah.
So let's just say use that as like a comparative, a benchmark.
Yeah.
So I quoted $1. So I'm expecting with my material cost being a certain amount, with my outside processing cost a certain amount, that I need to hit a minute cycle time.
Yeah.
If they come in and they say it's going to be 3 minutes, I know it's going to be a problem.
Yeah.
If they say it's going to be 70 seconds, I can deal with that. That's okay. We'll get through it. So that's where I needed to be. I already knew on the front end what my cost needed to be based on the pricing I gave my customer. And at that point, if I broke even or lost a little bit, I was okay with that because I knew that this is going to be temporary. I'm going to build more a larger customer base, and I was going to also be able to market these same parts to be able to win more customers. Because remember, I wasn't just learning CNC Swiss.
Yeah.
I was learning marketing.
Yeah.
And the first thing that you want for marketing is not just hashtagging and good content, but you want pictures of really cool parts.
Yep.
And every time something would come, unless there was an NDA in place that I wasn't allowed to do that, which I'm very respectful for. But actually what I ended up doing when we were slow in between jobs was the engineer and I would really literally draw a picture of a diagram of a part that wasn't even our part or had an order for, just so I was like, let's do something like this. Let's have, cross holes. Let's have a thread here. Let's do it in aluminum.
Yeah.
And I would buy material just to make really cool parts so I can then market them.
Yeah.
And people would be like, is this an aerospace part? Of course it is. Is this the part that, and that's how I got into those spaces. Obviously, it was, strategic. We weren't just drawing just to draw. But it was we benefited greatly from that strategy. And I hope that someone hearing this today, it resonates, because those are sacrifices. It really does cost money to invest. But if you're spending $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 on a piece of equipment, what's a couple of $100 on raw material, to make something really cool that you can market? Yeah,
so I am actually going to give you a very interesting challenge here. So now that you have accomplished your cycle time. And when I talk to my manufacturing customers, one thing they keep hearing every time is when they work with their customers, the cost pressures are increasing every year. Okay, so as soon as you are going to feel that, you know what, this is what I quoted, I am looking for 1 minute cycle time, and as soon as you achieve that, next year there is going to be a finance guy and he's going to say that I am actually looking for 20% cost down again. So you have another interesting challenge. It's all
that's why we don't do business with automotive. Obviously, our customers always are looking for cost savings, but if I have to be the most competitive, I'm not going to be a good fit. And I'm unapologetic about it, not arrogant in any way. I'm extremely grateful, and there are going to be times that I will take a hit for my customer because that customer understands big picture, and I look at big picture. I look at, okay, if I'm doing 10 parts for this customer and 1 of the 10 or 2 of the 10, I'm breaking even or I'm losing a little bit, but the other 8 are pretty good. We're in a good place here. Then obviously it's a partnership. I'm not going to be nitpicking unless it's like, a horrible and we're losing our shirts every time. And the majority of the time we're losing money. This is America. Like this is about making money. This is not about, doing favors. And I have to look out for my company. I have to look out for the best interest of my team and the growth. If I hand over that power to my customer, there's going to be customers that are partners that understand give and take, and there are going to be customers that don't understand that, and those are not going to be a good fit for me.
Yeah. Amazing. So that's it for today. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts or remarks?
So, I love what I do, and I honestly, this industry is thriving. I take great pride in being in it for so long. And it's part of my pleasure to be speaking on podcasts like this so we can promote the industry and let everyone outside of the manufacturing industry know that we are a thriving industry and that it's no longer, dark, dirty, and grimy. There's a lot of potential there. It's a lucrative business, and everyone should at least know about it and respect the industry in itself as a manufacturer. And this is a great platform to do that. So thank you for having me.
Okay, amazing. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be, just because you are doing well today does not mean that you cannot run out of business tomorrow. Okay, so understand all those bigger factors that actually play in the industry. For example, your acquisition risk, the diversification, whether you have your business is enough diversified or not, whether you have enough customers to provide the leverage that you are looking for, whether you are not relying on those just 5 customers. So on that note, Aneesa, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Aneesa, head over to pioneerserviceinc.com. It's pioneerserviceinc.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Matt Goosey from MRS Machining, who discusses the challenges associated with manufacturing complex parts in short runs. Also, the interview with Dave Hatage, who describes the role gears play in our society. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.